there are an incredible amount of red flags of this story. And we're going to go through the red flags quickly here. I want to try to keep it brief tonight because I'm sure more information is going to break about this. And right now we're all operating in a vacuum, but I did notice 10 red flags. And actually I noticed more, but I ran out the clock trying to make a presentation for tonight. So please forgive me. Red flag number 1 is that the people selling this story have all been caught selling provably fake stories before. Leslie Kean, Ralph Blumenthal completely got the ATIP story wrong, completely got the whole thing wrong. They trusted the stories that they were told as true from Lou Elizondo. Turns out much of what he told them, he was the primary source for that New York Times article, turned out to be factually completely incorrect. They also sold that story about Harry Reid confirming this stuff. Then they had to walk that story back. And Ross Coulthart provably sold the story of the British Parliament all being involved in a ring of children predators, essentially, right? That story turned out to be completely and totally fake. Then Ross Coulthart comes into the UFO community with his huge bluff that they had conclusive proof of alien technology confirmed by Michio Kaku. Go ask Michio Kaku if he confirmed alien technology. And when he's done laughing, right, he'll tell you he didn't confirm anything and he wasn't even shown evidence by Ross Coulthart. But you see, these people, they carefully craft narratives. They put together illusions of true stories. So the people selling this story, and this is a verifiable fact, so I'm not going to argue with people, but the people that are selling this current big story have all been caught selling provably fake stories before. Red flag number 2. These are secondhand accounts from someone who was never directly involved in any of these so-called top secret programs. These are just stories that people told him. Now he says he has evidence. He says he has documents. Nobody's allowed to see them. That's another red flag, if you ask me. Red flag number 3, according to Brian Bender, this man was, quote, groomed, unquote, by Lou Elizondo. And it was Lou Elizondo who misled reporters for years about a fake UFO program that was never funded, never official, and never secret, since that program never actually existed. Elizondo had to admit it wasn't a program, it was an activity he did in his spare time. It wasn't his primary job. He wasn't the director of anything. He was the director of a program in his own imagination. And this man, who's been lying to us for years, lied to us with TTSA, lied to us about ATIP, lied to us about the Felon 5, lied to us about more and more and more. I think he lied about being a remote viewer and having superpowers. Oh, and that gets into a whole thing too. Remember that the lies are ridiculous. They get more and more ridiculous as time goes on. And there is a video making the rounds right now, which I think is incredibly interesting. It's a video of Tom DeLonge talking about war stories that apparently he was told by liar Lou Elizondo. And this is very problematic because this is 100% provably fake story. It can't be true. But let's take a listen at Tom DeLonge repeating lies that allegedly or apparently he was told by Lou Elizondo.
Special forces operative, like a soldier. You know, he fought the Taliban in Afghanistan like a month after 9/11 with Secretary of Defense Mattis, General Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis. Yeah. Mattis saved his life. Lou got pinned down in a huge machine gun fight.
None of this is true.
And he called for air
bullshit.
support, and they said there's nothing in the area. And he said, I looked at my friend, I said, we are going to die. We're dead. There's like 100 of them shooting, and they're pinned behind a rock. Then he heard something on the radio, and Mattis comes flying in on like one of those Bradley vehicles, saying, and big door flies down. He's like, get in, boys. He's in a t-shirt. He's all, I'm busy. I'll get to you in a second. He's on the automatic grenade launcher, just wiping people out. You know, and Lou said he's on the ground just looking up at this guy in the sunset kind of thing, like, who the fuck is this guy? You know, and he saved his life, you know. So Lou came from like really being in war to moving up to a place where he had a lot of responsibility with a lot of very sensitive things. And
And by the way, friends, none of that is true. That entire story is completely and totally fake and made up. And I can prove it. There's a timeline of when Lou Elizondo was in the Army. There's a timeline, there's a timeline as well. The timelines don't match up. That story couldn't have happened. And just so everybody's aware, multi-star generals don't operate machine guns from, tanks or anything. They don't do that. They're in the offices directing their Army officers. This is a totally made up story. Did Lou Elizondo tell him that? What about Lou Elizondo telling people that he has remote viewing superpowers and then refusing to comment on whether he was using remote viewing, right? And what about that story that he saved his whole crew from getting murdered, right? By terrorists because he remote viewed the battlefield. All lies. And that liar, Lou Elizondo, is backing this story, right? But let's get back to the red flags. 1 second here. Let's get back to the red flags of this story. All right, so we've gotten that one, red flag number 3. Red flag number 4. According to Brian Bender, multiple media outlets passed on the story, including Politico and several others. According to Ross Coulthart, multiple media outlets, including the New York Times, Politico, and others, refused to run the story. He claimed they didn't have the backbone. They didn't have the courage to run the story. Or maybe these more credible, larger media organizations wouldn't touch this story with a 10-foot pole because they knew that the people selling the story have all been caught selling fake stories before. Red flag number 5. The Defense Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review approved this man to release this information. This means that there is no classified information in his story, despite his claims. Now, I could be wrong about this, but I checked in with an intelligence friend who's worked in intelligence. He's retired now. He worked in Navy intelligence his whole life, and he told me that the Defense Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review would never approve this guy to go and do interviews and talk about any of this if those were real classified programs that actually existed, because even the existence of those classified programs is classified. You see the problem here? The Defense Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review is there to prevent anybody from leaking any classified information. Why would they let him talk about this if this was true and there was real top secret or classified programs in the United States government involving this? And then, of course, we get the Pentagon denial. Big red flag here. And why don't the people selling this story explain this red flag, this huge problem with the story? They won't do it. Red flag number 6. This appears to be a coordinated effort. All the people selling this man's story are working together to release it together. Ross Coulthart interviewed this man in early May. Why did he wait a month to drop it? And why did this all happen in one day? You mean to tell me that Ross Coulthart has this true story, the story of a lifetime, right? This huge bombshell story, and he waits a full month and he lets himself get scooped by essentially a blog on the web, on the internet. The Debrief. No offense to the Debrief. I know they got a lot of people working for them, but it's still just essentially a blog site. This doesn't not make any sense. It's also interesting that this story appears to be coordinated with Christopher Mellon's op-ed piece last week. And a lot of people are also saying that this appears to be a coordinated effort to throw Stephen Greer's so-called whistleblowers, to take up all the oxygen in the room and destroy his event that's happening in a few days. I think Greer's whistleblowers are faker than this guy, though. And we proved that here. At least a few of them are completely and totally fake. They're not real. They're not real whistleblowers. This guy, I don't know. Well, it remains to be seen. But the fact that they are all coordinating together, and then, of course, we've got Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon pumping the story to their huge social media followings. It's all coordinated, all to happen on the same day. That is not a coincidence, friends. And why do only those three get access to this guy? And also, this guy also went to Star Trek conventions to meet Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, and allegedly or apparently, this is rumors and speculation, he tried to get them to tell his story and they weren't interested. If Corbell and George Knapp don't want to sell this story, what is going on with this story? Something must be made. Those guys are out there selling flares as real UFOs. They didn't want this story, allegedly. Something's a real problem. Red flag number 7, conflicting stories about why major media would not cover this story. These three say completely different things about that. And here's where it gets interesting. Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal both copied and pasted the exact same tweet on this issue, claiming the Washington Post did not pass on the story. Ross Coulthart says that everybody did pass on the story and nobody had the backbone to run the story except for the debrief and him, right? Why is there conflicting stories about why people wouldn't want this story? These three people can't get their story straight. I guess they forgot to send Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal, who both copied and pasted the same tweet today, must have forgot to copy and paste that tweet to Ross Coulthart, right? So they're working together, but they're doing a terrible job. All right, number 8. This man claims he has documents and proof. No one, including those selling this story, can see that proof because it's classified. If that were true, he would not have been cleared to talk about any of this publicly. DOPSR reviews are done to ensure that no classified information is spilled. And again, if those programs are real programs, even the existence of them cannot be talked about publicly. They would not have cleared him. But let's not let a little thing like the real way that the intelligence world works get in the way of a good story you can sell. And the people selling this story did not address this obvious elephant in the room. There's a real problem here. Red flag number 9. The people who are selling this story could have gotten on the record comments from the Pentagon before running it. They chose not to. Why? They could have gotten comments from the Inspector General's office. They did not do so. Why not? Well, we did get comments from the Inspector General's office calling his complaint credible and urgent. But does that mean because his information is so good? No. We're going to find out later that all of this so-called data was carefully massaged to sell this story. That's what we're going to find out. It's all going to start falling apart. That's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. Where are the documents that this man claimed that he has? And why can nobody see them? Even the people selling the story with him aren't allowed to see the documents? Come on. That's a huge red flag. The fact that he claims he has documents, but nobody's allowed to see them. So this is trust me, dude, right? A bunch of people told me some stories, and I got some documents, but you can't see them. Trust me, dude. And red flag number 10. This story is being hyped and promoted by the same people who brought us the TTSA techno scam and the fake Pentagon UFO program. I find that incredibly suspicious that the same people who duped everybody before, including essentially duping people out of investor money. Remember Lou Elizondo, Tom DeLonge, Christopher Mellon, they were going to build a spaceship with a revolutionary power source that would change the world. They collected millions of dollars and they did nothing, right? But don't worry, Lou Elizondo got a book deal out of it, and he got a TV show deal out of those taxpayer-funded videos that are nothing burgers. It took years to determine they're nothing burgers, those 3 videos, right? This is extremely, extremely problematic. And I have just a few more things to share. And here's more red flags. Eric Davis is behind this, partially. Gary Nolan and I have been working together since 2009, and what he told the reporter is 100% accurate. Much of what he said is partly based on my work over 25 years and the more recent work of my now former special security officer who works in Colorado Springs. This man from this so-called bombshell story is a real estate agent in Colorado Springs. And he's the U.S. government whistleblower who remains unknown, but will become known in a soon-to-be published expose in the Washington Post. And we have to be very careful here because, and then I have this too. This is pretty funny. Even Uri Geller. Uri Geller is critical of this story, right? How bad is it when Uri Geller is critical of this story? Uri Geller says, "My dear friends, there is something that is not right here. I need to investigate with my fellow contacts." Stephen Greenstreet says, "I really thought this UFO stuff might be BS. I really did. But now that Lou Elizondo's friend has told Leslie Keene and Ross Coulthart that aliens are real, I feel like there might be actually something to it." And here we have Brian Bender. He is a close ally of Elizondo, which is important context, I think. In fact, I would even say Lou groomed him a bit for several years now. They've been grooming this guy for several years to tell this story. Isn't that a little suspicious? The same people, right? The same people who sold us the garbage story from before about everything that was fake. And here's corrections about the remarks attributed to Harry Reid, proving that Leslie Keene and Ralph Blumenthal have provably sold 100% fake stories. That was a big story. Oh, Harry Reid said that there are crashes of objects of unknown origin may have been recurred and that retrieved materials should be studied. He did not say that crashes had occurred and that retrieved materials had been studied secretly for decades. Yeah, so the story was fake. And of course, we have the Pentagon response: no aliens. We have not discovered any verifiable information to substantiate claims that any programs regarding the possession of reverse engineering or extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently. Yeah. So what are we left with? We're left with a lot of red flags.